Welcome, everyone. My name is Shani Avni. I am the Ismar David Visiting Assistant Curator here at RIT Carigraphic Arts Collection. This semester, I have the pleasure and the privilege to teach the Women Pioneers in Design course. This course was created by RIT Distinguished Professor Emeritus Roger Remington in 2005, based on the Carigraphic Design Archive that Roger Remington founded in 1982. And since this course is based on the archives of mostly Euro-American women designers that worked in English, it is important for me to explore with the students women design pioneers that worked outside of the US in other languages and cultures. So I am thrilled that we have Yael Segal Hermoni with us today to share her ongoing and fascinating research. She holds a BA in Visual Communication from the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem and MA in Interdisciplinary Arts from the Tel Aviv University, where she's also a graduate of the Curatorial and Museum Studies program. In her MA thesis, Visual Hebrew Type Design during the first decade of the State of Israel, Segal Hermoni explored the work of 4 type designers that contributed to the renewed typographic style of Hebrew letterforms. She's currently a Ph.D. candidate in the Department of Jewish Art at the Bar-Ilan University, where she is researching the work and professional lives of women graphic designers in Mandatory Palestine and Israel between the 1920s and the 1950s. So thank you again, and I'll turn things over to you. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. Thank you so much, Shani and RIT, for the invitation to present to you all today. Before we dive into the subject of graphic design, we first need to understand what graphic design is, because it is a field that is difficult for people to define in words and to really understand its essence. You see, graphic design is a practice that brings together all elements that exist on a page, words, images, colors, all in order to create a visually appealing page. When I say page, I mean a poster, a book cover, a page inside the book, a package, a stamp, a website, an app on your cell phone, and there is endless other possibilities. But this is maybe a more technical definition of the field, because graphic design is actually a way of communication that tries to produce a clear visual representation of ideas and messages of cultural, political, or social nature. Messages whose visual language is adapted to the time and place in which they grow. As Shani mentioned, my name is Yael, and I am a Ph.D. candidate in the Department of Jewish Art at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. But even before that, I myself started as a graphic designer and a graduate of the Department of Visual Communication at Bezalel Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem, a department that started back in the 1930s as a department of applied graphics. When I started studying for my master's degree and moved from practice to research, I became interested in the history of this field, especially during the days of settlement and the formation of the Jewish country's identity. This area of interest presented 2 problems. One is a notable lack of documentation and research in the field, and the second is the question that brought us here today. Where are the women graphic designers? Why are most, if not all, of the known Israeli graphic designers from those days are men like Franz Krauss, who designed the cover of this booklet for the Association of Hebrew Painters for Applied Graphics in the land of Israel? Above, you can see written in Hebrew, from right to left, according to the direction of writing in Hebrew language, the words grafika shimushit, or in English, applied graphics. As I started to say, I wondered if there were any women involved in the field in those days. And over time, I began to discover women with significant achievements who were known at the time and who are not known today, or are not as well known as the men in the field. In this lecture, I want to deal with these women who worked in the field of applied graphics in the land of Israel from the 1920s to the 1950s. Using 2 female creators with a wide portfolio, Franziska and Esther Barli-Joel, I will try to outline a little of the group history of those engaged in the craft professionally and personally, and present their contribution. Most of all, I like to try and raise questions about what were the difficulties they faced and why they disappeared. I want to start with a historical context. The graphic artists who were active in the beginning of the 20th century in Mandatory Palestine came here after acquiring education and professional practice in Europe, mainly in Germany or in Weimar Republic, as it was called at the relevant time. They are the ones who promoted and established modern professional graphics in the Mandatory Palestine and later on in the State of Israel. Modern not in contemporary sense, but in the sense that binds them in the modern movement. Therefore, in order to examine the field and the women who worked in it, we must first examine a little their environment of origin and also understand what the role of graphics artists was in Mandatory Palestine and in the State of Israel. This will be a starting point for understanding women's work in the field. In the Weimar Republic, or in Germany between the two world wars, the influence of modernism was prominent in all areas of Jewish cultural activity. Let's briefly recall what modernism is. The modern movement that developed at the end of the 19th century rejected the familiar and outdated tradition and sought to reinvent culture. The modernists, including the modernist graphic artists, wanted to create a utopian, better world and believed in power of the machine and the potential of the industrial technology. They rejected ornamentation and utilitarian decoration, believing that a single modernist language unifies all the arts. They combined these principles many times with spiritual, socialist, and political beliefs, according to which design and art can and should change the face of society. In the days when the modernists were looking to fix the world, graphics design had become a legitimate tool for conveying their message. If we also briefly examine the female aspect, it seems that the European women's place in society has also changed following the growth of modernism. The period of the Weimar Republic in Germany has showed cultural and academic flourishing, the beginning of a new era for women in which they received new constitutional and social rights, and many of them joined the workforce. In fact, the women at the time felt much more liberated and independent than before and began to study and to integrate into professions that were close to them before. But prosperity of liberal ideas came to an end in the 1930s. In 1933, the Nazis took over what until that time was Weimar Republic. In the years followed, the Holocaust Accord and Jews and other minorities were persecuted by the Nazis, who by the end of the war had murdered 6 million Jews. Jews tried in the days leading up to and during the Holocaust to escape outside the territories occupied by the Nazis. Some fled to Mandatory Palestine, a place where the United Nations decided to allow the establishment of the Jewish state in 1948, with the goal that it would be, among other things, a destination for Jewish refugees who fled Europe. If we go back to the days before the establishment of the State of Israel, those involved in the field of graphics who came to Mandatory Palestine in the 1920s and in the 1930s brought with them new designs and wanted to meet the new needs of the society being built here. They joined the project of building Hebrew culture and presented a personal commitment to the new, a value that was inherent in the European modernist concept from which they grew. That is, the activity of graphic artists in the 1930s and 1940s presented an ambition to build a new world in the national and modernist aspect, and the activity of many of them stood out and is well known. They were responsible for significantly shaping the country's visual feature, coins, stamps, institutional symbols, the state emblem, and city symbols. And if we are dealing with city symbols, these three symbols, symbol of 3 Israeli cities that are in use to this day, the symbol of the city of Haifa, the symbol of the city of Holon, and the symbol of the city of Jerusalem, all were designed by women, including Esther Barli-Joel and Franziska Baruch. Esther Joel was born in 1895 in Hamburg, Germany, and after studying art, she moved to Berlin, where she studied at the Bar-Ilan University of Arts with artists such as Alexander Archipenko and Ludwig Meindl. In 1925, she immigrated to Mandatory Palestine with her husband, a well-known dermatologist, Chaim Berlin, and their son Dan, and lived in the city of Tel Aviv. In 1930, she divorced and moved to live and work in the city of Haifa, later changing her name to Barli-Joel. She was an active artist and painted and participated in many art exhibitions over the years. But at the same time, she was also very involved in graphic design and was one of the first to join the establishment of the Association of Hebrew Painters for Applied Graphics in the Land of Israel. The booklet we already saw earlier belonged to this association, an association that would later become the Association of Graphic Designers in Israel. Among her well-known works, we can see the symbol of the city of Haifa, which she designed in 1936, and the symbol of the city of Holon, which she designed in 1946. Both designs show the characteristics of the cities in those days. In the Haifa logo, you can see the mountain and the sea. There is a port of Haifa. The upper part of the design, there is a local fort cut in half by an olive tree branch as a symbol of peace. The design of the ship seems to be intended to connect the city to its long history. I came across claims that there is a connection between the shape of the ship and the symbol of the biblical tribe of Bulun, whose territory includes territories of the city of Haifa. The Holon logo has a sycamore tree and the sand hills, alongside a quote from the poem Land of Israel by the Israeli poet David Shimoni, wanted to show the determination of the first inhabitants to build a city in the sand. The quote that appears at the top of the design, and again read from right to left, Af al pi chen ve'lamrot hakol, which means nevertheless and in spite of everything. And information I found about both city symbols, Haifa and Holon, even on the website of the municipality of Holon, the designs are attributed to the architect, Mrs. Berlin, or to the wife of the architect, Joseph Berlin, and Barli-Joel does not receive the proper recognition. In 1942, Barli-Joel proposed a new logo for the city of Jerusalem on her own initiative, and the shared formal language between her design is evident. The local Jerusalem mayor in Mandatory Palestine adopted our proposal, yet her design was shelved due to bureaucracy and the political situation at the time. Again, we are talking about the days of World War II. From the 1930s to the 1950s, you can see a large number of works created by Barli-Joel. She designed logos for committees and associations, including the logo of the Industrial Owner Association. She created a very impressive number of posters and flyers for permanent companies and organizations such as Lloyd Ltd, Jewish National Fund, the Levant Fair, an international trade fair held in Tel Aviv at the time, and much, much more. Her design often shows a connection with a surrealist artistic style that she carried with her from the days studying in Germany, sometimes in the choice of techniques, sometimes in the choice of colors, and sometimes in the design of the characters. You can also see a long-term relationships the designer had with the Working Mothers organization, from whom she created over the years a large number of posters, brochures, and more. She was an active artist and an activist woman until her death in 1972. Franziska Esther Baruch was also born in Hamburg, Germany in 1901, where she studied at the educational institution attached to the Museum of Decorative Arts in Berlin. In Berlin, she studied the subject of typography, lettering, book art, and more. Among Baruch's educators were designers influenced by the new book art in the spirit of the English arts and craft movement and its influence in the Weimar Republic. The shape of a letter was in the mid of many of her design, and most of her work was based on continuous engagement in letterform works. While studying in the 1920s, she started working and engaging in diverse and important projects in the service of the Reich's artistic advisor in the Weimar Republic, and also for other commercial companies as well. She dealt with projects such as designing plates for the porcelain manufacture of the Royal House in Berlin. She painted the letters in the Agada and made an artistic version of Jewish text that sets forth the order of the Passover Seder, accompanied by the works of the artist Yaakov Steinhardt. She also designed titles for the publishing house Rimon, which started operating in those years in Berlin and she designed a new Hebrew typeface, stamp, which in the 1940s will be widely used in the state of Israel and will decorate the official paperwork of the state. In 1933, with the strengthening of the Nazi Party, Baruch immigrated to the Mandatory Palestine without her family and settled in Jerusalem. Her father died when she was still a child, and her mother and sister killed in Theresienstadt ghetto during Holocaust, while Baruch made a great effort to bring them to the Mandatory Palestine. In the first years, she lived in pinch and made a living alongside occasional graphic works by baking and selling marzipan biscuits that she made according to a recipe her mother taught her. On the marzipan, she stamped motifs and symbols of various religions and holidays and wrapped them in cardboard packaging with a trademark she created, Dauphiné Baruch pastry. Later, Baruch worked for national institutions and contributed her talent to the visual image of the young country. Among other things, she designed emergency currency banknotes, income stamps, and the cover of the Israeli passport. She also succeeded in making her mark in the design of the symbol of the city of Jerusalem in 1949, a design with a rampant lion against the background of the walls of Jerusalem and olive leaves around. It is worth noting that according to notes found in Baruch's archive and in the archive of another woman, graphic designer, Ellie Gross, it seems that the two worked on the symbol together as part of the activities in the Jerusalem Painters Association for Applied Graphics, an association where other well-known male designers were involved. Another important chapter that should be noted in Baruch's career is connected with the Schocken family, starting with Zalman Schocken in the 1930s in Germany. Zalman Schocken was a German Jewish publisher and a co-founder of the large chain of department stores in Germany at the beginning of the 20th century. As the Nazis grew stronger, he was forced to immigrate to Mandatory Palestine. Here, he continued his activities in publishing books as part of the Schocken Publishing House and was the owner of the daily newspaper Haaretz, which in English means the land. In the 1930s, Baruch renewed the logo of Haaretz newspaper. The design she created is known and used to this day, for the newspaper is still active. She cleaned up the letters that previously had Art Nouveau characteristics. She shortened the letters, brought them closer together, rounded their sides, and matched each of them to the following one. In the 1940s, she created the Schocken Publishing logo, which is also known to this day. The Hebrew letter Shin, which is the first letter for the name Schocken, with an allusion to a sailing ship as requested by Schocken himself. And in the 1940s, 1950s, she developed the Schocken Baruch type for the publisher books. Over the years, she continued her collaboration with the publishing house and the newspaper by designing book covers and annual publication. The list of Baruch's work is long and numerous, and her influence is visible in various fields. She worked and designed for print, exhibitions, symbols, signage for government and commercial institutions, and more. Moreover, she became involved in the world of type design, where she is recognized as the first woman to deal with the subject in Israel, alongside a small handful of male designers. She died in Jerusalem in 1989, never married, and left no family. These professional women, and other like them, such as those featured here, Friedel Stern, Ellie Gross, Miriam Karoli, and others, left their mark on the state of Israel and provided it the Zionist spirit that dominated at the time with external representation. Despite the independent work of each of them, it is also possible to notice similarities and launching point that are important for understanding their lives and works. They were independent, living or influenced by what was happening in the Weimar Republic and by the German immigration. Women who worked from the studio they had in their home, sometimes alongside the family they nurtured. Sometimes they actually presented an unusual family unit for that time, divorced, unmarried, without children. A family structure that raised questions about the price they paid in light of the family's social norms that existed. Although they perceived their work in different ways, some saw it as a mean to finance themselves, and some saw it as a true national mission. but whether they had an activist Zionist spirit or not. They knew that their role was to provide graphic service to the emerging culture in Israel, and not necessarily to draw their personal signature. It is worth noting that Franziska is one of the few early Israeli graphic artists who's been recognized in recent years. In 2015, the exhibition New Type, 3 Pioneers of Hebrew Graphic Design was presented at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, curated by the designer Ada Valdi, who specifically placed the field and Baruch at the far front of the stage. This is after Valdi opened Baruch's closed archive at the museum, an archive that until she opened it remained closed and cataloged and not exposed to the public learning. But why didn't Baruch get wider recognition alongside other women? Perhaps a significant part of the answer for this is lack of research and knowledge in Israel in the field of graphics in general, and the lack of documentation, preservation, and signing of the materials by graphic artists. The graphic product is created on commission for a specific private, commercial, or institutional client. More than once, the creator or creators simply did not see the need to sign the product, maybe because they felt less important than the national mission, maybe because of the modernist concept in which the presentation of the creator's aspiration and perception is limited. Also, many works were not preserved. Some are in the hands of heirs who are not necessarily known or don't recognize the archival value of the materials. So it is reasonable to say that there are other male and female graphic designers that are not credited for the design. A little less than a year ago, I had the privilege of taking part in giving a platform for these two female designers, Franziska and Esther Barli-Joel. Together with Israeli art historian and curator, Dr. Dalia Manor, I curated an exhibition that dealt with their work. The exhibition presented works that have not seen the light of day for years or were not shown to the public. Posters, sketches for brochures, and sketches for city symbols, and many more. It was also an opportunity to present work process and techniques used by the designers. In the last few years, most of the graphic designers with whom I opened the discussion about the lack of research about women in the field do put the responsibility for this on the fact that there is not much research in general, or told me that maybe their work was not that significant. But it seems to me that this is a very convenient way to solve it. If we look at other areas of design and art, it seems that this is not particularly different there either. And it is a direct continuation of the method there weren't enough and they weren't good enough, as described by Dr. Ruth Marcus, an Israeli art historian and gender researcher, and the founder of the Association for Women's Art and Gender Research in Israel. These are women who were appreciated by the men who worked alongside them. Women awards were employed a lot and were well known in those days. There is no doubt, even from the brief examination we have made here, that there is a place to present these women, their story, and their great contribution. Toda rabah. Thank you all for listening. You are more than welcome to write to me if you have any question or thoughts.